Today we're unboxing and talking about our initial impressions of the newly released Coros Vertix 2. And we'll go over all the new features, talk about what I'm excited about, and go over a few things that I wish were different. And I haven't been able to race with this watch just yet, but Dave Dillon of the Chase the Summit YouTube channel has, so we'll ask him his thoughts on having used it for a 50K trail race in July. First things first, let's talk about the size of this watch. The watch is pretty large. It's 50 millimeters in width, and it's about 16 millimeters in depth, so it does feel pretty big on my 165 millimeter, baby-sized wrists. And it has a 1.4 inch touchscreen display with 280 by 280 pixels. It's also a sapphire lens, and it's about 16% larger than the previous model. The watch body is titanium alloy, so overall the watch should be extremely durable. Now the Vertix 2 is pretty heavy. It weighs in at about 89 grams, and the watch also comes with a hefty price tag of about $700, 700 euros, or about 600 pounds. And here's how this watch looks compared to my Garmin Enduro, which is also a pretty big watch, and here's how it looks compared to my Garmin 945 LTE, and the Wahoo Rival, and the Polar Vantage V2. Now this watch ships with this fancy new case here, protective case just to kind of store your whatever in. Kind of comes with this like phone holder piece. So ideally you kind of just drop your phone in there, keep it safe that way. Or maybe you're using it to store your drugs or something like that. But the big new feature with the Coros Vertix 2 is that it now sports a dual frequency GPS chip. So you'll see 3 modes here. The standard GPS only option, and this is kind of what we're all used to. The watch takes GPS readings every second, and in all honesty, this is probably what I'd use if I wasn't trying to test this watch or wanted to kind of keep a decent amount of battery life. And with this mode, the Vertix 2 can last 140 hours, so 5 days of GPS usage, which is absolutely crazy. Next mode is the all system on mode. It turns on all satellite systems simultaneously. So that's GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, Beidou, which is the Chinese satellite system, and QZSS, and this mode will go for 90 hours. Lastly, we have the all system on plus dual frequency, which is the most accurate available, and it'll allow the watch to communicate with satellite systems on 2 concurrent frequencies. And I think that people that are gonna kind of benefit from this particular mode are mostly athletes that have had GPS issues due to kind of tall reflective buildings, or people doing activities along sheer rock walls, or potentially people in really dense forest areas. This mode will go for 50 hours, and that's still pretty good. Keep in mind that that's still longer than most of the other GPS watches on the market. I get that Coros is super proud of being the first watch to market with this dual frequency GPS trick up its sleeve. But honestly, I think that Coros should be more proud of the fact that they've built a watch with a just ridiculous battery life. And this watch does use the standard kind of Coros 3-pin USB charging cable, which looks like this. Take a close look because you're never gonna need this thing. Maybe put it in the attic somewhere. Label it because you're gonna forget about how to charge this thing. And if you use this as a smartwatch or kind of in the standard standby mode, it'll go for 2 months or 60 days. If you remember, that's significantly longer than I was getting with the Garmin Enduro watch, which I was absolutely ecstatic about. Let me know in the comments if you do want to see some sort of like Enduro versus Vertix 2 video on this channel. But the Vertix 2, it now has onboard music, It doesn't have Spotify or Deezer or anything like that, but it works more like a traditional MP3 player where you just kind of plug it into your computer and drag and drop files onto the watch storage. You've got 32 gigs of storage space to work with there, and you can connect the watch to a Bluetooth headphone and away you'll go. And the Vertix 2 has, 3 basic buttons. The top button just kind of turns on and off the backlight. You've got this digital crown button, and it will, navigate and select items throughout the operating system. And you can also use this for kind of zooming in and out on maps. The watch has maps. The Vertix 2 now has full offline mapping capabilities. Currently, you do need to be running a route to access the map screen, but in future updates, they're gonna have that just as a data page that you can add and see at any time. I am seeing, no street names or trail names currently. You don't get detailed left-right turns with the mapping, and you can't generate a route, based on an address or something like that. But if you do veer off course while you're actually out there running on the trails or something like that, the watch will give you an alert so that you can kind of take a look at the map and navigate yourself back in the right direction. And there are 3 types of map viewing options. There's landscape mode, topo, and they have this hybrid view. And normally I don't love touchscreens or digital crowns on watches, but I have to admit that I do like the way that Coros is using this for mapping. It seems to work really well. You just use the touchscreen to kind of navigate left and right and up and down on the maps, and the digital crown to zoom in and out. The last bottom button navigates back within the operating system, or if you hold it, it'll pull up an additional menu area where you can access music or settings, or they even have this new option to control your Insta360 camera, which is kind of a cool new feature. And the operating system itself feels really snappy. The watch actually has a new processor here. It's about 20% faster. And the operating system has a new glance style area of widgets where you can kind of see things like steps and your heart rate over the past few hours. And again, this is a spot where Coros, I would say they don't overuse the touchscreen, but within these glance widgets, it's kind of like the perfect scenario for using either the touchscreen or the digital crown. You also have this sleep widget here, and as you guys probably know, I do love tracking my sleep, so you can kind of see the amount of sleep that you've gotten, as well as the time within each cycle. Personally, I would love to see Coros expand on this widget a bit in the future so that you can kind of visualize those sleep cycles. And obviously I don't have a ton of sleep data yet, but this morning it did seem to track when I woke up. It just didn't seem to track that I went back to sleep for an extra hour here. So, when I do finally wake up, what I've been trying to remember to do is to use the Vertix 2's new electrocardiogram functionality. And to use that, all you have to do is basically put your finger on the bezel, make sure your watch is decently tight. That'll provide the watch with 2 leads so that it can actually detect the electrical impulse in your body. And it's not gonna, diagnose you with any sort of medical issues or anything like that, which is one of the things that, Apple or some of the Samsung watches can do. But what it will do is it'll provide you with Coros' own sort of HRV score. And it's, a score from 0 to 100, with 100 meaning that you're full and more recovered, versus a lower number meaning that you might want to rest and recover a bit more. But that number is pretty fantastic. HRV is just the heart rate variability score, and I think it's a fantastic measurement of how recovered you really are. And just like other watches from Coros, you'll get a running power estimate, which, I think is a fantastic, training and racing tool. This watch is also equipped with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi connectivity. I will say, at the time of making this video, the Wi-Fi is really only used for over-the-air software updates, but I am guessing that, Coros is gonna change that very soon. But this watch does not have ANT+ connectivity, which means, it is really hard to recommend to triathletes. Triathlon dorks, we always tend to have lots of gadgets, lots of devices, lots of power meters, and you'll tend to want to connect to an indoor trainer, as well as something like Strava and your watch, and you want to have something like ANT+ that would allow all of that stuff to happen. Other complaints with this watch, it's not the brightest watch that I've ever tested. Visibility, I would say it looks fantastic when you're outdoors, but when I measure the brightness, I'm only seeing about 20% of a watch like this one, the Garmin 945, which is kind of the brightest watch that I've tested on this channel. I'd also love to see, more control over that backlight, making sure that, it doesn't flick on when I'm sleeping, maybe a little bit more control over the duration and the brightness levels of that particular backlight. But overall, not a ton of complaints about this watch. I obviously haven't done a ton of testing yet, but one guy who, has done a bit of testing and who, was even able to race with the Coros Vertix 2 was Dave Dillon. So I actually begged him to send me a little video clip with his thoughts on the watch.
What's up, Matt? Look at us. We're doing that YouTuber thing that the kids say. What is that, collabing? Ah, man, I'm old. So first of all, I want to thank you for having me on your channel. It is a pleasure to be here. And I want to talk about the Coros Vertix 2 in a real-life race environment. So I was lucky enough to have the Vertix 2 back in early July, and I was able to run a 50K ultramarathon with it. And it took me about 5.5 hours, not my fastest time, but it was a pretty solid effort. The first thing I noticed is the crazy battery life on the Vertix 2. Even though I had this thing in that new dual frequency mode, it still only lost about like 8% in that amount of time, in that 5.5 hour span. So that was really impressive. Another nice thing about the Vertix 2 that I noticed in a real race environment is that the larger screen is really handy to have because you can fit 8 data fields on there now, rather than the 6 in the previous Coros models like the Vertix and the Apex and Apex Pro. Having 8 data fields so you can really stack all the data on one page and you don't have to scroll through the pages, that is really nice to have as well. And just like all the other Coros devices in a race environment, I do like having that scroll wheel. I love the Garmin buttons, don't get me wrong, but I really like the digital crown on the Coros watches, and I know that's really subjective and everyone has a love-hate relationship with the digital crown, but it is something I like because you can just simply scroll really fast and go through the pages really quickly. You don't have to worry about where your thumb is. Those later miles in a race, sometimes your head can get a little bit wonky. And this isn't specific to the Vertix 2, but in a race environment, I also like seeing that running power metric, especially if it's a kind of easier course like I ran in July. It was pretty flat, so I can really monitor my running power, make sure I'm not going out too hard. I can, look at that in conjunction with the heart rate and compare them and see where I'm at. So that's always good to look at as well. And another big bonus of wearing the Vertix 2 in a race environment is having that built-in map on board, because you can see the context around you, where the river is, where the next turn is on the road, where an aid station is. You can have that all right on a map on your wrist without having to fumble with your phone. Hugely valuable and one of the standout features on the Vertix 2. I guess the only kind of downsides I can say to the Vertix 2 is the size of it. I just don't like big watches. This one's a little bit chunkier than usual, and I find them just be a little bit uncomfortable after prolonged wearing. When you're jogging, you can feel that weight, and I don't know. That's a minor complaint, but I gotta say something negative here, so I'm gonna throw that in there.
Thank you, Dave, for doing that. I really appreciate it. Be sure to check out his channel. It's Chase the Summit on YouTube. He has some really fantastic running content, and I would say a ton of fitness and outdoor gear reviews. The guy's channel is, absolutely amazing. On this channel, I'm planning on making a video, more focused on durability after having used the Vertix watch for, 100 days or a few months. But I'm also considering making a video comparing that watch to the Garmin Enduro. So, let me know in the comment section, if that's something that you'd be interested in, or what kind of video you'd like me to make in the near future. And, as always, don't forget to get out there and swim, bike, run, rinse, and then repeat it all over again. And we will see you guys in the next one.